Hi, I'm Cassandra Anderson, and this is
Chantel Colwell,
and we are
C Squared.
So today's topic is about the climate change with weather, and one of my first questions is, Chantel, when was the earliest time that you can remember when hearing about climate change?
To be quite honest, it was when I was really young. Now, I'm going to age myself a little bit. I am in my mid-30s, so my first time hearing about climate change would have been the very early 90s. I do remember my parents talking about it, kind of making fun of it because it was actually global warming back then. And if you're from Northern Ontario, you understand about maybe 15, 20 years ago how deep the snow was. We were not experiencing global warming. What we were experiencing, though, was the early effects of climate change. And I remember actually Al Gore being the first person to speak about climate change, like in the early 90s, I believe. When do you first remember climate change starting?
I could definitely agree, and I'm dating myself too, in my 30s. And I remember even the earliest of high school, the snow was horrible, the ice pellets and everything. So when I heard about global warming as well was early 2000s at high school, and they were having a lot of interviews, like people coming in doing these talks talking about the global warming and how places were going to be flooded in certain parts of the world. And a lot of people weren't very skeptical about it, just because, like you said, we were seeing the early times of the climate change, and it was called global warming. So I didn't even take it seriously in the beginning either at such a young age. So that was something different for us. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's any questions in the chat room.
Yeah, right here. We have something from Ishpreet Singh, and it says, how is climate change affecting farms and our food? Actually, that's a very okay. Well, climate change is affecting our food definitely by the fact that a lot of countries aren't even able to grow their produce and be able to handle a sustainable farm because of the fact that they're going through a drought in such high temperatures. And then we have Canada, which certain parts of our climate, it's melting at a rapid pace and creating flooding in certain communities.
And as we have a picture set up, Chantel, did you want to talk a little bit more about that?
So that the picture that you're seeing on the screen actually is the effects of what happened in BC with all of the forest fires. And as you can see, it has totally destroyed the wildlife in that area.
Yes, yes. And I like this other question that was written by Seneca Journalist. Do you think more people would want to help stop climate change if they heard more facts like that? I do. I believe a lot of people would want to get more involved if they heard the true facts of how climate change is affecting us in many different ways, especially around the world. I remember the earliest in 2013, an ice storm happened. It was one of the worst that happened in Canada. And it was different, and it changed the whole outlook of how you would look at climate change and global warming. So what do you think, Chantel?
Most definitely. If people knew about what exactly was going on, I'm not sure if you've seen what's happening in the northern communities of Canada, like the Northwest Territories and the Yukon. The Indigenous peoples of those areas are actually having to change the way that they did their traditions. They're having to reteach themselves when it comes to hunting, and a lot of people are actually just having to migrate because the animals are migrating and the animals are dying off. So if people would actually take a look at what is going on in just their own backyard, they would be able to recognize the issues of climate change.
Melissa Cohan actually said a really good question is, what are some ways to combat climate change? Well, even how we address brushing our teeth, washing our hands, doing the dishes, the amount of water that we're using would be one aspect, or instead of taking an Uber or Lyft, actually do bicycle or walking instead of using transportation that would cause pollution. Another way that I really love is seeing how certain places like Subway, I love my salads, and I love the salad bowls, and how they changed it to, instead of plastic, they changed it into paper plates.
Right. Well, Canada is actually bringing in a new law coming this December to get rid of all single-use plastics.
Yes.
So our government is really trying to phase out plastics, especially, we've talked about this before, because our waste, Canada's waste, is actually ending up on the shores of other countries. So our problem is becoming the world's problem. And single-use plastics is one way that we can try to combat that, you know?
Definitely. So that would be the best way to combat from pollution is ourselves, and I would say to continue to do the best that we can to reduce pollution from not littering. Yeah. And so I would say that would be a wrap-up of our podcast on weather climate change, and thank you very much for listening.
Thanks for having us. Have a great day.